الرئيس أيها الحضور الكريم يعقد هذا المؤتمر تحت
Mr. President, distinguished audience, distinguished guests, this conference is held under the theme Mediterranean Dialogues. We must recognize that the dialogue has become a pressing need, and that is a road to salvation from everything that our world is struggling against today, namely terrorism, which moves about and doesn't stop at any border. That is why I choose to address in my lecture the topic of terrorism, its real root causes and how to tackle them. Terrorism is a systematic violence carried out by armed groups to change a reality, to impose new paradigms, which are often worse than the existing reality. Terrorism is nothing new. The world has known it at different points in time and with different faces. The terrorism which is hitting our world today, it's possibly the most dangerous one in that it's widespread and it has most advanced weapons. How did it see the light and how did it spread to the point that it threatens the whole world? In 1979, the Soviets got to Afghanistan. The United States of America, with the support of some Islamic and Arab countries, supported the counter movement against the Soviets based on Islam and Islamic religion, considering that this would run counter the communist thinking and atheism, and this might sort of stop them. The Americans ignored that Islam, despite being against the communist doctrine, was not a Western thinking, but rather had its own character, which is different from both. With the passing of time, the Afghani jihadists, which were supported with money and arms, turned into a terrorist organization, which has manipulated the notion of jihad and attracted young Muslims from the four corners of the world, giving rise to the Al-Qaeda organization. It's Al-Qaeda which perpetrated the attacks in New York on 9/11, 2001. So the terror machine turned against its creator, which in turn decided to destroy such a machine. There was a sort of an earthquake which shook the U.S. Well, there was a new war in Afghanistan, which then spilled over to Iraq, leaving behind destruction, death, and hatred in both countries. There was a constant military pressure on al-Qaeda, and it led to its dismantling. But it gave rise to new dogmatic trends and movements and new terrorist organizations which began to grow and spread further. In 2005, we saw that Abu Musab al-Zarqawi appeared in Iraq, and he accused the Shia of infidelity, takfir. The notion of takfir for Islamists means the duty to fight and kill. And we have seen what followed in the wake of this doctrine. This is the scheme that was designed for the region. And let me state that very clearly. There is a new form of terror which is now being created to destroy other battlefields. We hear people talking about the new Middle East, creative chaos. We've seen the new Arab Spring, with them the Arab countries which began to sort of be destroyed by this, from Tunisia to Libya, to Egypt, to Syria, along with some African countries. Your Excellency, distinguished guest, I have clearly warned against being swept along the Sunni-Shiite war and the disaster that it could bring it into our region. And I have advised the European ambassadors and all the Western politicians who have called on me that what was being prepared for the East, if it were to succeed, not only would it cause tremendous damage, but it would also have great repercussions on Europe. There won't be any boundaries that will separate us because we have the Mediterranean, which we all share. Nevertheless, the scheme was beyond any possible warning, and here we see that the entire Middle East is affected by the burden of this. And we see terrorism moving from one country to another in Europe. I warned many times about the growing Takfiri fundamentalism, the danger it carries with it, and the danger for the Mediterranean region. Lebanon is a meeting point between Europe and the East. In 1989, I spoke with the French President François Mitterrand, and I explained that the confrontation between the West and the extremist Takfir will be one of the major challenges of the end of the 21st century. The Lebanon, which they're trying to attack, is the land of dialogue between Muslims and Christians, a land of culture and a lifestyle which makes us different from other countries in the world. In an interview to a newspaper in the Gulf countries in 1994, I warned that fundamentalists represented the main threat to Islam. And if they were to come to power in Islamic countries, that would be extremely dangerous. In 1995, I launched a message to world leaders. We had witnessed many terror attacks in Bosnia, in Algeria, and even in Paris. At that time, I did write, these are very dangerous signals of a conflict threatening our future, which cannot be avoided by nuclear deterrence or conventional wars. No one is spared by violence, which is generated by racial and fundamentalist feelings. And these crimes, which were nurtured in the laboratories of political realism, will infect those who let them grow. However, our warnings fell on deaf ears. It's true that there are many persons that are affected by terrorists, but there are others that take advantage of it. Well, there are certainly countries that sponsor terrorism. It's not born spontaneously. There are many factors which pave the way for the emergence of terrorism. First of all, the oppressive regimes, be it a false democracy or a declared dictatorship, where citizens have no free expressions and have no democratic means to change the conditions of power, coupled with poverty, need, and ignorance, and extremist thinking and fanaticism, which stimulates instincts, kills reason, paralyzes logical thinking, and offers wrong solutions. There are many countries that take advantage of this and support a new form of terrorism, which takes up new names, and use this terrorism to pursue their own interest, attacking a number of countries, their economies, and their stability. This is the typical paradigm for the creation of terror organizations. I must say that this destructive machine may get out of control and start strike at random. This is exactly what happened with the current terrorism that we witness. It started by attacking some Arab countries, which were swept by the so-called Arab Spring, but it soon became broader in its scope and moved to Europe and affected Paris, London, Brussels, Madrid, Nice, Munich, and also the United States and other countries. Today, this danger is very serious, and the threat is a serious threat between sleeping cells, and no one knows where and how it can strike. Mr. President, distinguished audience, the world should not remain hostage of fatal extremism. We must find a proper solution to face up to the current situation. And then we have to think in terms of a radical solution to ensure that this is not going to happen again in the future. Now, if the current solution, immediate solution that we need requires a specific action which is based on force to repel terrorism, the radical solution is more important because it does prevent terrorists from strike again. So we have to sort of think in terms of the root causes of terrorism, that is the ideology underlying terrorism, which justifies the killing of others and demands that others be killed. So we have to strengthen the democratic values which have respect for the human beings, quite apart from religious beliefs, that have respect for the human beings and that can live free. And this is the only thing which allows human beings to face up to this ideology. We must try and educate the future generations. We have to think in terms of finding solutions to poverty, to fight poverty, create a situation which is more conducive to a better position of women. We have to make sure that poorer countries can sort of overcome their backwardness, because we want to sort of go towards authentic democracy. As we are talking about Mediterranean dialogues, I see that the Mediterranean is at the heart, at the center of 3 continents. And it is a region which brings together different cultures, different regions, and has a rich inheritance of cultures, civilizations of ancient peoples and modern peoples. The Mediterranean then can be an area which is a privileged area for dialogue between culture and religion. Lebanon, by its very nature, it's a plural society which brings together Christians and Muslims. There are, in their respective confessions, there are different churches. They live together and they share the life, the political life and the social life. There are some political differences as well, but they are part of the policy approach, and there is a national unity in the country. His Holiness Pope John Paul II said that Lebanon is more than a country. It is a message. And it is this message in particular that encouraged me to address the United Nations and propose that Lebanon should be turned into a permanent center for dialogue between the various civilizations, religions, and races, to train educators who uphold human values and coexistence. This led me to sort of participate to this conference and address you today. I'm quite confident that the Mediterranean civilization is a common good which brings together all the cultural, historic elements which belong to our countries. We must strengthen the dialogue between the various religions to put an end to the violence and the terrorism. We have to make sure that this initiative of dialogue between religions and cultures must be pursued. And this is an appeal which I'd like to launch here. You've focused on this particular objective today. All the peoples in the world try to pursue this goal, and I'm sure that my plea will be followed by you. Thank you for your attention.